Starmer has made a massive mistake. He handed the most sensitive diplomatic keys in the world to a man he already knew was a liability. The Prime Minister is currently hiding behind a "he lied to me" defence, while the Conservatives, who have suddenly rediscovered their moral compass, claim this is the worst scandal of a lifetime. We'll get to that in just a minute because I'll need you to understand how insulting that is, and I need you to see the game the Conservatives are playing here, because it's not opposition, it's theatre, and it's getting exposed in the most spectacular of ways. Okay, so let's get the obvious bit out of the way first. Yes, appointing Mandelson was stupid. The Cabinet Office due diligence report flagged 3 major concerns before Keir Starmer even made the announcement on December the 20th, 2024. First, Mandelson had been fired from ministerial positions twice before. Second, he got a commanding share of the Global Council, a lobbying firm with significant dealings in China and Russia, creating obvious conflicts of interest. And third, and this is the big one everyone's talking about now, he maintained a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein and accepted his hospitality even after Epstein's conviction. Any one of those should have been a red flag for our most senior diplomatic posting. All of 3 together, yeah, bad call. Starmer saw that report and went ahead anyway, and he deserves criticism for that. But here's the thing that's driving me absolutely crazy. Where were the Conservatives when the appointment was actually announced? Where was their principled opposition when it might have actually mattered? Because according to Burghart himself, only one Conservative French bencher opposed the appointment at the time.
Well, actually, several leading Conservatives did oppose it at the time.
Well, you didn't as a party, to be clear. You did not as a party say it was a bad idea.
Alicia Kearns, who was on the front bench, did oppose it. And I know you need to be balanced, Laura, but I think somehow pretending that the appointment of Peter Mandelson is in any way the Conservatives' fault is not right.
So during a Commons debate earlier this month, she said this.
I'm afraid it is untenable to suggest that what was already known of Mandelson's simpering after the conviction of Epstein was not enough to make him inappropriate to be ambassador, and I did object from day one on that exact basis. Is on Hansard.
But when you actually look at the parliamentary record, the earliest evidence of her opposition is from September the 10th, 2025, when she became a sponsor of the early day motion, which called for Mandelson to resign. That's 9 months after the appointment was announced. Now, to be fair to Kearns, she might have raised objections elsewhere that didn't make it into the official record, and she's at least the only Conservative who seems to have taken her opposition role seriously. But day one, that's a bit of a stretch. And what about the rest of the Conservative Party? Radio silence. Complete silence. Whereas Trevor Phillips just tickled Burghart's tummy, Laura Kearnsberg actually did push her on this directly.
But I just wonder, though, your colleague Kevin Hollinrake outlined a long list of those red flags that were in the public domain. Why then, as a leadership team, did you not oppose the appointment?
As I say, a member of the Conservative front bench did oppose the appointment, but we obviously didn't see the official report, right? The Prime Minister admitted in the Commons on Wednesday that the official documentation that he was given prior to Lord Mandelson's appointment raised these concerns, and he went ahead and did it anyway in a way that he simply should not have done.
Except that's just bollocks, isn't it? Because Burghart's colleague Kevin Hollinrake even pointed out that those red flags were in the public domain. Mandelson's ministerial resignations, public knowledge. His lobbying firm and China connections, public knowledge. His relationship with Epstein, absolutely public knowledge. There were newspaper reports at the time raising concerns. So the Conservatives had all the information they needed to oppose this appointment when it announced in December 2024, and they chose not to. They stayed quiet and they let it happen. And now, over a year later, after Mandelson's been sacked following the release of the Department of Justice files, they're clutching their pearls and acting like this is the greatest constitutional crisis in British history. But here's where it gets properly insulting, and this is the whole reason why I made this video, because I wasn't even going to bother until I heard this. Burghart sat there on Sky News and called it this.
This, I'm afraid, some people will find it quite sad, but this administration under Keir Starmer has failed. It has U-turned, I think, 14 or 15 times now. Okay. It has had 2 resets in the past 5 months, and it is now caught up in the worst political scandal of my lifetime. And it's time for a new type of politics. I think that type of politics is embodied by Kemi Badenoch, who is honest, straight-talking and decent. And I'm very proud to be part of her shadow cabinet.
I'm afraid we've probably got to wrap this up now, but of course you know that there will be people shouting at the television saying 14 years, Tories, all that.
This is a new leadership. This is a new team around her. And I say one of the reasons why I backed Kemi in the first place was because of her integrity and her honesty.
His lifetime. His lifetime. Let me remind you what Alex Burghart's lifetime included, because he served in Boris Johnson's government. He was actually there for Partygate. Remember that? When Boris Johnson and his staff were throwing parties in Downer Street while the rest of the country was locked down, while people couldn't visit their dying relatives in hospitals, while families couldn't attend funerals. That's not just bad appointment or questionable judgment. That's a government treating the rules as optional while ordinary people suffered the consequences of following them. And that's not even getting into the PPE scandal, where the billions of pounds of public money got directed to Tory donors and associates through a VIP lane, much of it for equipment that was completely unusable. Billions. Public money that could have gone to proper procurement, to the NHS, to anything remotely useful, instead of lining the pockets of people the Conservative parties had in connections. That's not a scandal to Burghart, that's just business as usual. But appointing a lord with a dodgy address book to a diplomatic post, that's the worst scandal of his lifetime.
And it is now caught up in the worst political scandal of my lifetime.
Nobody died because of Mandelson's appointment. Nobody was unable to say goodbye to their loved ones. No public money vanished into private pockets. It was a bad decision, sure. But to put it above Partygate or PPE corruption is so staggeringly tone deaf, it actually makes me angry. And then there's the other contradiction at the heart of Burghart's entire performance. Kunzberg asked him directly, if you believe this is so serious, if you think Starmer's position is untenable, why don't you table a motion of no confidence?
I don't think his position is tenable, but this is really an issue for the Labour Party. The Labour Party will have to decide whether it's going to remove him or not. Kemi has said one of the things the Conservative opposition can do is table a motion of no confidence. There's no point in us doing that if other people won't support it.
But you could do it. You could do it to try and put pressure on. If you
if
really believe now's the
as you
moment
know,
for him to resign.
What we've said to Labour MPs is if they want to talk to our whips about that motion, we'd be very happy to have those conversations.
Yet, in the very next breath, he says this.
What was very telling for me was I was in the House for 6 hours on Wednesday, this long debate on the release of documents, and no Labour backbencher stood up to defend the Prime Minister at any point. This is why I think everybody in Westminster understands that we've kind of crossed a line. And we've moved to a question of if, to a question of when. And I think in those circumstances, it's incumbent on the Labour Party to sort this out as quickly as possible.
But if you believe that we have crossed a line this week in the terms of our national life and that the Prime Minister's time, as you claim, is now up, you could, as an opposition party, you could say it's time for him to resign. That is something you could do in Parliament yourselves, and you're stopping short of that. So actually, aren't you just enjoying this political moment?
There's no point in us bringing forward a motion if it's not going to succeed.
Do you see the contradiction? If Labour MPs won't even defend Starmer in a debate, if the Labour benches are completely silent when their own Prime Minister is under fire, then a motion of no confidence would have a real chance of succeeding, wouldn't it? But they won't do it. And do you know why? Because this isn't actually about bringing down the government. It's about dragging this out, keeping it in the news cycle, and extracting maximum political damage without actually having to do the work of opposition. If the Conservatives genuinely believed that Starmer's position was untenable, they would table that motion tomorrow and force Labour MPs to choose. But they won't, because they're more interested in the performance than the outcome. So yeah, Starmer's made a bad call appointing Mandelson. He deserves criticism for that. But watching the Conservatives try to turn this into the crime of the century while refusing to actually do anything about it, while claiming it's the worst than the actual crimes they presided over. It's not opposition, it's just noise, and we, as voters, deserve better than that.